Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the 5th edition of IRC's special video series. Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Byron Shoulton, the international economist of FCIA Management Company. FCIA underwrites and services trade credit and political risk insurance policies for the Great American Insurance Group. FCIA Management Company has been a part of the Great American Insurance Group since 1991 and has been in business since 1961. Today, Mr. Shoulton will be discussing the political and economic landscape in China. How would you describe the present economic situation in China?
Growth in China is starting to slow. The country confronts a major challenge in terms of very high real estate prices. Some would describe it as runaway real estate prices, which the leadership is focused on trying to get under control. You have very high labor costs, rising labor costs, as employers are forced to pay more because labor shortages are starting to creep into certain parts of manufacturing. The cost of raw materials have also gone up. So we expect inflation to be the big challenge for China over the next 3 years. The other question, big question, the challenge that faces the Chinese, which is not having enough affordable housing for millions of migrants who have moved from the countryside as the economy has boomed over the last 2 decades.
I see.
Should we be concerned about the Chinese banking industry right now?
Yes. There are concerns that the Chinese banks will be hit with a spike in non-performing loans if in fact there is a burst in the property bubble.
Right.
We do know that the Chinese have deep pockets. There's a lot of money around, so there's not a big fear that the Chinese would be unable to address the issue. I think they have the funds that they would, and they're very sensitive about that, particularly since the major banks are government-owned banks.
Right.
So yes, there are concerns, but we believe the Chinese government has the ability to step up to the plate, and they've already indicated a willingness to do this.
Based on the current political climate in China, how would you predict the next 5 years to be as far as political stability is concerned?
I mentioned social unrest before.
Yes.
This is not a small matter for the Chinese. It's a big issue for them. Keeping social unrest under wraps is something that they have not taken lightly and will not take lightly. Social unrest is something that they will not tolerate because that suggests that there is a threat to the leadership, and they are particularly sensitive to that this year based on what has happened in the Middle East and North Africa. We happen to know that there's been a spike in the number of what they call incidents of social unrest. So it's clearly in the background there. The Chinese face a leadership change next year. So a new generation of leadership comes in. We understand that there are different currents that run within the leadership. Some people want more liberalization, others want the status quo. So I suspect that as this new leadership takes over toward the end of next year, we'll see some of these issues about whether there should be more democratization in the system. We'll see some of those debates probably take place behind the scenes, obviously. No matter who the leadership, will not allow social unrest to bring about instability in this country. It's something that they have been very strong about, and I think even more so now.
What are some other serious challenges that the institutions and the leadership are facing in China?
I'd say that there appears to be a struggle between local authorities, local provincial governments, and the central government, in the sense that it is felt that there's a lot of corruption at the local level.
Okay.
You get the feeling that what people who are disgruntled are doing, they're appealing or trying to appeal to the central government to intervene. They're trying to say, see what these guys down here are doing.
Yeah.
So that I think remains a big issue. So for the most part, the displeasure appears to be centered toward the local authorities as opposed to central government.
What is the best we can hope for in the next, say, 3 years between the U.S. and China in their relations together?
I'd say number one, that the U.S. Get our deficit house in order, in as much as the Chinese are probably the largest investor in U.S. treasuries. And I think the Chinese are watching very closely and probably a little nervously that it's taken us this long to resolve this issue. So I'd say that's number one. The other issue, obviously, is this thing about the currency, the extent to which the Chinese currency is considered overvalued.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of pressure by the U.S. and even Brazil, for that matter, on the Chinese to allow the currency to appreciate. Clearly, the Chinese, are very concerned about relationships in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
They feel that they're the big boys on the block in that neighborhood, and they sort of resent anyone telling them what to do or interfering, quote unquote, in issues that China might have with its neighbors.
Okay.
In the global context, the U.S. economy is recovering very slowly.
Okay.
Europe faces a major debt crisis. So to a great extent, the world is looking toward China to sort of keep the momentum of growth. So China is really the country to watch. Just continues to be, it's there. I mean,
Right.
another 10 years of growth, and China will still not be a modern country.
Right.
In other words, so in other words, they have another 2 decades of growth.
Well, Byron, we really appreciate your taking the time to sit with us.
My pleasure.
And we hope we can do this again sometime.
I hope so.
And for all the rest of you out there, thank you again for joining us as well. And please stay tuned for another interesting topic brought to you by IRC.